My name is Ethan Miles. I'm 30 years old, and on the night I turned 30, my family threw a celebration under a bright gold banner that said, "Congrats, Logan," while I sat alone in my dark apartment with cold noodles and a silent phone. They cut lemon cake for my brother. They toasted his executive future. They laughed like I wasn't part of their blood. Not a single message for me. Not one call. What they didn't know was this: the job they were celebrating was a position I controlled. The offer they bragged about existed only because I approved it, and I held the power to take it back. But that was only the first crack. Before I go any further, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been pushed aside by your own family, because this story isn't just about a forgotten birthday or a job gone wrong. It's about what silence can turn a person into and what happens when the quiet one finally stops staying quiet. I grew up in a beige house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind of place where porch lights buzzed at dusk and you could hear sprinklers clicking across every lawn. But inside that house, nothing was quiet. Everything orbited around one person, my younger brother, Logan. I didn't understand why back then. I just knew the world bent around him, and I learned to flatten myself so I wouldn't get in the way. One of the earliest memories burned into me is a dinner when I was 8. The kitchen smelled like garlic bread and canned tomato sauce. Mom placed a plate of spaghetti in front of Logan piled so high it looked like a dare, then dropped a half serving in front of me without even glancing up. "Mom, I'm still hungry," I said. She didn't look back. "Finish that first." Then she turned to Logan. "Sweetie, want more big game tomorrow?" He grinned with sauce on his cheek. Dad laughed behind his newspaper. I pushed cold noodles around my plate, pretending I didn't feel anything. I didn't know it then, but moments like that were carving deeper than I realized. The next year proved it. I won first place at the state science fair, a project I built from scratch nights, spent soldering wires on my bedroom floor while the cheap desk lamp hummed above me. The gym lights were warm, judges shook my hand, and for a second it felt like someone saw me. Mom didn't. She checked her watch every 5 minutes. "Logan's playoffs start soon," she whispered, tugging Dad's sleeve. "We can't be late." On the drive home, I held my blue ribbon in my lap like it was fragile. They took Logan to Olive Garden for losing a soccer game. I sat in that booth surrounded by laughter that somehow never included me, and swallowed that feeling again. I didn't know it then, but I was learning to make myself small. Middle school made it worse. Logan spilled soda all over my keyboard, my homework, my music files, everything soaked in sticky brown sugar water. I remember yelling, the fizzing sound, the panic tightening my chest. "Mom, he ruined it." She came in, glanced once, and sighed. "Ethan, don't overreact." Logan said the door was open. It wasn't. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's just a keyboard." But it wasn't just a keyboard. It was the little world I'd built to escape. She never replaced it. I saved up for a cheap used one 2 years later. By then, the music in me had gone quiet. High school came with a different kind of sting, one that still burns today. Logan copied my English essay word for word, turned it in, got caught. We were called to the teacher's office, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry insects. "Which of you wrote the original?" she asked. "I did," I said quietly. Logan, eyes wide and fake confused, said, "We probably studied together. Maybe mixed it up. We never studied together. Not once." Mom was called in. Logan cried on cue. She hugged him like he was the victim and said to me, "Drop it, you're upsetting your brother." The unfairness punched through my ribs, but I swallowed it down again, metallic and bitter. I didn't know it back then, but every time I stayed quiet, I was building a habit I'd carry into adulthood. A habit of disappearing. College should have changed something, but it didn't. I worked part-time jobs, night shifts at a grocery store, early mornings at a call center, tutoring on weekends. I applied for scholarships quietly. When I got the Helix Corps Merit Award, the scholarship that would change everything, Mom told the neighbors, "Ethan's good with forms." He probably filled it out early. When Logan dropped out of college, "College isn't for everyone," she said. "Logan's a free spirit." Some nights during those years, I'd send money home to help out. Months later, I learned Logan used some of it for a weekend trip. "That's what family is," for Mom said. The words lodged in my throat like a splinter. By the time I finished school and moved back home temporarily, the house felt smaller, airless. Logan took over the basement with his creative projects, which mostly meant laundry piles and scribbles on whiteboards. Every morning, Mom made pancakes for him. I'd get the burnt ones scraped off the pan. Little things, always little things, but little things accumulate. And I didn't know it then, but they were adding weight to something inside me, something that would eventually snap. When I landed my first real interview at HelixCore, I thought naively that maybe this was the moment my family would finally see me. I remember standing in the kitchen that morning, Ty's slightly crooked portfolio under my arm, hands shaking just enough to feel it. Logan sat at the counter eating pancakes, drowning in syrup, scrolling his phone. He didn't look up when I walked in. Dad entered a moment later, clapped Logan on the back and said, "Ready for your interview, champ." I blinked. "It's my interview." Dad paused, confused, then forced a laugh. "Right. Good luck, Ethan." He patted my shoulder like he was consoling a neighbor kid who lost a soccer game. Logan smirked behind his fork. I stepped outside into the cold morning air, with a sting sitting right under my ribs. I didn't know it then, but moments like that were teaching me something dangerous. Silence was easier than correction. I got the job. Not because of connections, not because of charm, because I worked for it. When I told my parents, they nodded politely while watching Logan unbox some new gadget he didn't need. "That's nice," Mom said. "Did you hear Logan might start a podcast?" A podcast. That got more enthusiasm than my entire future. That night, I lay in my old childhood bed, staring at the ceiling fan wobbling above me, listening to Logan laugh in the basement. A distance grew between me and them, not loud, not dramatic, just slow and steady like a crack forming in a windshield. Then came Christmas. The house was warm, with cinnamon candles and pine needles. Lights glowed soft on the tree. Logan unwrapped gift after gift, a DSLR camera designer, sneakers, a leather jacket he'd mentioned once in passing. My gift was a multi-tool keychain. Mom laughed and said, "You're practical, honey. This is perfect for you." Everyone else moved on. I sat there holding the cold piece of metal in my palm, wondering when practical had become another word for unimportant, and knowing deep down this moment would sting again later in life more than I expected. Years passed. At HelixCore, I worked my way from analyst to strategist to project lead. I stayed late. I learned the messy parts of the company back-end structures, integration politics, the unglamorous operations that kept everything running. They trusted me with early decisions, quiet but crucial ones. My family didn't ask, not once, not ever. Logan, meanwhile, failed upward through a string of half-hearted jobs. When one flopped, they applauded his courage to pivot. When he quit another, it was a creative reset. Then came the first time he needed me professionally. He called late one night, my monitor bathing me in blue light. "Dude," he said, "can you fix my resume? I'm applying for a marketing position." I opened the file. It was a disaster. Inflated titles, buzzwords stacked like building blocks, achievements that belonged in fiction. But I fixed it, cleaned it, made him look competent. He got the interview. He got the job. Mom posted on Facebook, proud of our Logan marketing genius in the making. Not one mention of me. I told myself it didn't matter. But that lie was getting harder to swallow. One Thanksgiving burned itself into my memory. The house smelled like turkey and thyme. Everyone sat around the table sharing what they were grateful for. Logan said family, and Mom teared up. Dad nodded proudly. When it was my turn, I said my job. Logan snorted. Of course he did. Everyone laughed. I smiled along, even though inside it felt like something sharp was dragging across my ribs. I didn't know it then, but I was being trained to disappear politely, quietly, consistently. By 28, I wasn't the kid in the corner anymore. At work, my decisions carried weight. Managers listened when I spoke. My name was tied to deals and integrations that actually mattered. Still, every time I walked into my parents' house, I felt myself shrinking an inch. But something had shifted in me, a tension, a pull, a quiet rebellion I didn't yet understand. And I didn't know it then, but everything in my life was building toward a single moment, a moment I couldn't stop, a moment that would start on the night my family celebrated Logan and forgot me completely. The real unraveling didn't happen on my 30th birthday. It happened the next morning when the world was quiet, my apartment dim, and the silence felt like it was pressing a hand against my throat. I woke up with the stale smell of cold noodles still lingering in the air. My phone lay face down on the nightstand. I checked it knowing exactly what I'd find. Nothing. No missed calls, no texts, not one happy birthday. What I didn't expect was the video. A story from my cousin Chloe Logan standing under a bright gold banner that read, "Congrats, Logan," while my mother cut into the lemon cake she only ever made for special occasions. People cheered, glasses clinked. Logan grinned like he'd cured a disease. My name wasn't spoken once. I sat on the edge of my bed, the blankets pooling around my waist, nausea tightening under my ribs. I thought I'd already swallowed the worst of it the night before. I was wrong. I showered, dressed, and sat at my kitchen table where the sunlight came through, just enough to remind me what loneliness looked like in daylight. Work was my anchor. Work didn't forget me. So I opened my laptop. That's when I saw the email from HR. Need to discuss a candidate. ASAP. A jolt went through me, not surprise, but confirmation. Deep, bitter confirmation. It was about Logan. His application was still sitting in the system, half approved, pending, waiting for the final sign-off, my sign-off. I hadn't even processed that when my phone rang. Logan. Of course. I let it ring twice, then answered. He didn't bother with the greeting. "Bro, last night was insane. Everyone was talking about my job. You should have come." "It was my birthday," I said. He paused only long enough to pretend he cared. Right. But dude, you missing the party." Massive FOMO. I stared at the wall. "Why are you calling to say thanks?" he said, "for the offer, for the green light. You had my back. That's what brothers do." Then, as if rehearsed, he added, "Check my LinkedIn. The engagement is wild." I checked. He had posted, "Thrilled to announce I'll be joining Brightline Dynamics as incoming VP of Strategic Innovation." VP. A title he invented out of air and ego. The caption read, "No shortcuts, no handouts, just grit." I felt something freeze inside my chest. I couldn't tell if it was anger or disappointment or if those two had finally fused into something new. "You know that's not the position," I said. "Not yet," he replied, "but you know how it is. Everyone inflates a little online." "No, everyone didn't." "You should see my DMs," he continued. "People already treat me like a leader." He kept talking, drowning in the sound of his own voice. "And a recruiter asked about my leadership experience," he said. "I told them you'd vouch for me." "You told them what?" "Relax." I said, "You're basically a director." "I'm not." "Close enough," he said. "Don't be so literal, dude." Something inside me snapped, but quietly. Not a break, a shift. He wrapped up the call with, "Don't get emotional. It's not that deep." But it was that deep. It had always been that deep. After the call, I sat motionless, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in my apartment. My laptop pinged again. Another HR email. 3 internal complaints already. Candidate reached out, introduced himself as their future VP. I exhaled slowly, pressing my palms against my eyes. This wasn't a mistake. This was Logan being exactly who my family raised him to be: reckless, entitled, invincible, because someone else always covered the fallout. And someone else was always me. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside. The cold air slapped against my face. I walked with no plan, no destination. I passed kids screaming on a playground, the metal chains of the swings clanking like old bones. I passed houses glowing with early Christmas lights, each one looking warmer than anything I'd ever felt inside my parents' home. I walked until my breath came out ragged and white in the air. When I finally stopped staring at my reflection in the dark window of a closed thrift store, I didn't see exhaustion. I saw certainty. I wasn't just hurt. I wasn't just angry. I was done. Done protecting him. Done shrinking. Done pretending his life didn't come directly from the pieces I carved out of mine. And I didn't know it then, but this was only the beginning of everything that would come crashing down. 2 days after that walk, I went back to the office pretending I was fine. The building's glass walls reflected a dull winter sky, and the cold air inside felt sharper than usual. People greeted me with the same polite nods, unaware that something in my life had cracked open like ice under pressure. I barely sat down before a message popped up from Jenna. "We need to talk. He's causing more issues." I went straight to HR. Jenna was waiting in a small conference room, phone in hand. She didn't waste time. She turned the screen toward me. Logan had made another LinkedIn post, honored to be stepping into an executive pipeline role. My vision for Brightline's future is already taking shape. I felt heat rise up my spine, slow at first, then burning. He also contacted legal, Jenna added. Asked for early access to proprietary materials? I blinked hard. He what? They flagged it. Said it's a major compliance concern. Of course it was. Of course he didn't understand boundaries. He'd never had to. And there's more, she continued. He introduced himself to several managers as their incoming supervisor. Supervisor. He wasn't even hired. My pulse hammered in my ears. What are our options? I asked quietly. We rescind, Jenna said simply. If we don't, and he joins every rule he breaks, becomes your responsibility. Because you approved his file. There it was. The truth I'd been avoiding. If I didn't act, Logan wouldn't just sink himself. He'd pull my career under with him. That night, my mom called. Then again. Her persistence wasn't concern, it was fear. Fear that Logan's perfect image was cracking. I answered on the third attempt. Ethan, she snapped before I could speak. What did you do? And nothing, I said. Yet. Logan told us you're sabotaging him. Of course he did. I'm protecting my company, I said. You're his brother. You're supposed to help him. I let out a dry laugh, like he's ever helped me. She went silent. That silence told the truth better than she ever had. I hung up. 10 minutes later, Logan texted, we need to talk now. I didn't respond. I didn't owe him that anymore. Instead, I opened my laptop. His application file glowed on the screen. Approve, rescind. 2 simple buttons, 2 drastically different futures. I didn't click either. Not yet. Not because I doubted, but because I wanted the decision to come from strength, not wounded pride. I stood by the window as snow began falling again. Streetlights lit the flakes, like sparks drifting through the air. A spark. Small, but enough to burn everything down. The next day, Marcus, the CEO, called me into his office. We want you leading due diligence for the new acquisition, he said. You're reliable, you're sharp. You see things others miss. No fanfare, no applause. Just real recognition, real trust. A word my family had never given me. Earned. That evening, Logan's unraveling hit its peak. Voicemail after voicemail, each one wobbling between arrogance and desperation. Bro, onboarding is delayed. Fix it. You know how much this means to me. Don't be petty. Call me back. Seriously. Every message chipped away the last bit of sympathy I had left, but the final snap came that Wednesday night at 9 p.m. He pounded on my apartment door like he was trying to break it down. I opened it and saw something I'd never seen on him before. Fear wrapped in anger. What the hell did you do? He demanded, pushing into my apartment without waiting for permission. I didn't do anything, I said. You told HR I lied. You did lie. He stepped closer, breath sharp with beer. This job was everything for me, and you're supposed to have my back. I'm supposed to be responsible, I said. You're supposed to be honest. He let out a bitter laugh. So that's it? You think you're better than me? No, I said quietly. I always was. You just never noticed. Shock flickered across his face. He pointed at me. His hand shook. They're going to choose me, he whispered harshly. They always have. They always will. And that was it. The last nail. The thing I had always suspected, finally spoken aloud. He believed it. Deeply, confidently, cruelly, he left. The door slammed hard enough to shake the frame, and in the silence he left behind, I felt something I'd never felt before. Clarity. Pure, sharp clarity. By Friday, the email arrived from my mother family meeting. Let's clear the air. Clear the air. For the first time in my life, I didn't dread a family gathering. I felt ready, because they wanted a conversation, and I was finally ready to give them the truth. I pulled into my parents' driveway just before noon. The sky was a dull, washed-out gray, the kind that made every shadow look sharper. Frost clung to the dead grass. The house looked exactly the same as it had my entire childhood. Faded yellow siding, sagging porch wind chimes, tapping a nervous rhythm in the cold breeze. But inside, something was waiting to break. When I stepped through the front door, the first thing I noticed was the smell, burnt coffee over toasted bagels, and a faint hint of lemon cleaner. A please don't notice the chaos kind of smell. The dining room was already full. Mom hovered by the kitchen doorway, wringing her hands. Dad stood stiffly near the window. Logan slouched at the dining table, arms crossed, jaw tight, like the whole world owed him an apology. Mom forced a smile. "Ethan, good. You're here." I shut the door behind me. The air felt thick, heavy, wrong. We sat. The chairs scraped against the old wooden floor, the sound sharp enough to make my teeth clench. Dad cleared his throat. "We're here to talk like adults. No yelling, no drama." That was almost funny. This family lived on quiet drama, the kind that cuts softer, deeper over years. Mom jumped in. "Logan says there's been a misunderstanding with his job." "No," I said. "There hasn't." Logan let out a sarcastic breath. "Here we go." I turned to him. "Then you talk. Go ahead." He straightened, voice dripping, rehearsed outrage. "I worked for that job. I earned it. I don't know what your problem is, Ethan, but going to HR behind my back trying to get my offer pulled, that's messed up." My jaw tightened. "I didn't go behind your back. HR contacted me because you broke every rule they have." He slammed his hand on the table. "I didn't break anything," Dad snapped Logan. "No," I said calmly. "Let him keep talking. It'll make this easier." Mom's eyes widened. "Ethan, please don't start." I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila folder, the same one I'd stayed up organizing, the same one holding 2 decades of truth. I set it on the table with a soft thud. "This is my side," I said, "since you've never asked for it." Mom frowned. What is all this?" I slid the first page toward her. A printed screenshot of Logan's incoming VP post. Bold, obnoxious, dripping with delusion. Logan stiffened. "Why do you have that?" "Because it matters," I said. Next, I slid forward the HR documentation, internal complaints, timestamps, notes from legal compliance flags. Dad picked up a page, eyes narrowing as he read. "Is this real?" "Yes." The room went still. Mom's fingers trembled as she turned the page. "Logan, tell me you didn't. It's normal," he snapped. "Everybody inflates online. It's branding." "No," I said. "Branding is spin. What you did is fraud." He pointed at me. "You set me up. I leaned back. I cleaned your resume. I approved your file. I gave you the opportunity you bragged about earning with no handouts. Do you know how insulting that was?" He swallowed but said nothing. I wasn't done. I reached into the folder again, this time pulling out my performance reviews, commendations, scholarship letters, promotions. Everything my family had never bothered to notice. I spread them across the table one by one. Mom stared, like she was seeing a stranger. "Ethan, you never told us any of this." I met her eye. "You never asked." That landed hard. For the first time, Mom had no quick defense, no justification, just silence. Logan laughed a bitter, shaky sound. "So this is what you wanted? A show you think dumping your little trophy box on the table makes you better than me?" I looked at him, really looked. And I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not even hatred, clarity. "I don't think I'm better," I said quietly. "I know I am. Because everything I've built, I built alone. You've had applause for failing. I've had silence for succeeding." His face turned red. "Shut up." "No," I said, "not anymore." I pulled out the final page, my letter. I unfolded it slowly. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. To Mom and Dad, I began. "This isn't anger. This isn't revenge. This is me stepping back." Mom blinked fast. "Ethan," I kept reading. "I'm done being the son you look through. I'm done shrinking so Logan can take up the whole room. I'm done hoping for recognition you never intended to give." Dad's jaw clenched. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Logan looked like someone had smacked the air out of him. I folded the letter and set it down. "This isn't me leaving the family," I said. "It's me leaving the role you put me in." Logan stood abruptly, chair scraping hard. "You think this changes anything? They're still going to choose me. They always do." There it was, the rot. The truth he'd been holding like a weapon. I stood as well, slowly, deliberately. "Not this time," I said, voice like ice. His eyes widened. I picked up my coat, slipped it on, looked at the 3 people who shaped every bruise inside me. Then I walked out, leaving the manila folder behind like a mirror they could no longer avoid. The cold air hit my face the moment I stepped outside, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. The days after the brunch felt strangely quiet, like the world was holding its breath. Not the suffocating silence I grew up with, the kind that made me feel invisible. This silence felt different, solid, controlled, mine. Logan tried to strike first, of course. He posted a long, dramatic essay on LinkedIn about corporate corruption, hinting that unnamed, jealous individuals had sabotaged his career. He framed himself as a fighter, a visionary, a man betrayed by his own blood. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself. I didn't need to. People inside the industry had already seen the compliance flags. Recruiters whispered. Hiring managers rolled their eyes. Word spreads fast in our world, especially when someone inflates their title to incoming VP. My parents started calling, first once a day, then twice. Then texts that said things like, "We love you. We're thinking of you. Please talk to us." For the first time in my life, I didn't jump to respond. I let the messages sit unread. Not out of spite, out of peace. I wasn't begging to be seen anymore. At work, everything shifted. Marcus pulled me aside after a strategy briefing, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "You're one of the most reliable people we have. Don't underestimate yourself." That sentence did something to me. A quiet, steady click inside my chest, like a lock finally opening. Weeks passed. Winter melted into early spring. I got promoted, no drama, no cake, no applause. Just a clean earned title and the authority that came with it. I bought the lakeside cabin I'd been eyeing for years, a place with tall windows, soft morning light, and enough silence to feel like a different world. I played piano again, slow at first, then, with something like muscle memory waking up, I wrote 2 small essays, observations, stories. One of those stories went viral. Suddenly, people wanted more. Publishers reached out. Platforms asked for interviews. For the first time ever, my voice, not my silence, was valuable. And then last week, Logan texted me. "Can we talk?" I looked at the message for a long time, the lake shimmering in the reflection on my phone screen. Maybe I'll answer. Maybe I won't. Because this wasn't revenge. This was the beginning of power. And they handed it to me without even noticing. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, make sure you hit subscribe. Stories like this don't end with one confrontation or one moment of clarity. They keep unfolding in the choices we make afterward. And trust me, mine isn't finished. The people who underestimated me are starting to realize they never knew me at all, and the next chapter is already taking shape. So tell me your story in the comments. Tell me when you realized you deserved better. And stay close, because what comes next is something you won't want to miss.